You know, there have been countless times when I've held the rosary in my hands, waiting to feel something, some shiver, an immediate peace, a nearly tangible sign that God was right there with me. And when nothing happened, a quiet frustration would rise, a hollow whisper in the soul saying, "Was my prayer in vain?" Perhaps you felt it too, that expectation that something extraordinary should appear the instant the beads touch your fingers. It's in that space, between God's silence and the impatience of the soul, that many grow discouraged, even abandon prayer altogether. But the mystery goes much deeper. The touch of the rosary isn't just contact with beads of wood, metal, or crystal. It's an invisible doorway opening, a portal to a reality the eyes cannot see. Padre Pio said the rosary is like a sword. Simply wielding it already changes the battlefield, even before a single strike. When you hold the rosary, something shifts in the atmosphere of your life, whether you realize it or not. It's as if an unseen network of grace begins to move, creating protection, clarity, light. The act itself carries a power that doesn't depend on the emotions of the moment, but on the quiet faith dwelling within. I often recall a passage from the Gospel that touches me deeply. The woman who had suffered for 12 years with bleeding didn't make speeches, didn't cry out for answers. She simply touched the hem of Jesus' garment. And from that touch, virtue flowed, healing flowed, life flowed. Jesus himself said, "Someone touched me, for power has gone out from me." It's exactly like that with the rosary. When you touch it with faith, an invisible channel opens. It's not about emotion or immediate sensation. It's faith translated into action. An act so simple the world overlooks, yet so powerful heaven responds. Perhaps that's the secret, to accept that with the rosary, grace doesn't begin when you finish praying, but the very instant you hold it. In that small movement, the soul already connects with God, light is already kindled, the battle begins to turn. It's there the invisible moves. The rosary is, therefore, more than a prayer. It's a silent embrace, a raised sword, a bridge linking your fragility to God's heart. How many times have you held the rosary, hoping for something almost magical to happen? A warmth in the chest, a shiver in the hands, an immediate peace. And when nothing came, the heart grew restless, nearly convinced the prayer wasn't working. That silent expectation is one of the greatest spiritual traps. It turns faith into a search for feelings, reducing the mystery of prayer to an emotional experience. But faith is not an internal spectacle measured by the intensity of what we feel. It is, above all, an act of trust sustained even when all seems silent. Padre Pio spoke with conviction. True faith does not lean on visible signs, but on perseverance. He knew many gave up on prayer because they confused the absence of emotion with the absence of God. The mistake is thinking that without a shiver or immediate consolation, the prayer is worthless. This thought creates distance between us and heaven because it places experience above truth. Experience shifts, wavers, deceives. Truth remains. And the truth is that by holding the rosary, you already enter the field of grace, even if the senses cannot confirm it. The rosary is not a spectacle, it's a doorway. It is not meant to entertain the mind with sensations, but to open the heart to God's invisible presence. When you pray just to feel, the rosary becomes a kind of spiritual anesthesia. But when you pray to remain, even in arid silence, the rosary becomes a root that sustains, light that endures, a sword that protects. The secret is this: do not seek to feel, but learn to believe. For it is precisely in moments when nothing is felt that faith reveals itself most purely, most truly, most powerfully. Often, we believe life changes only through grand decisions, but the truth is it is shaped in the silent choices we make each day. The habit of delay, the repeated excuse, the thought that postpones, these are seeds planted in fertile soil. Before we know it, the entire field of life is overrun with fruits we never wanted to harvest. Every step we fail to take makes space for stagnation to become our way of being. It is in the detail, in the repeated, inattentive gesture, that life carves its direction. There is no future without the sum of all presents, and no abundant harvest if the planting was neglected. Those who dream of prosperity but live in small delays are digging a hole where a foundation should rise. Life does not demand payment all at once, but one day the full bill arrives. And when it does, the pain of awakened conscience can be far greater than any sacrifice made before. That is why every moment holds hidden power. Small decisions are like bricks supporting a house. If placed carelessly, the structure may rise, but sooner or later it will yield under the weight of time. When we see today as the only real space we have, we understand there is no small choice. All carry the weight of a greater destiny. Life is not only about grand decisions. What truly shapes our path are the small acts, almost imperceptible, repeated daily. In the silence of a morning, in the instant you decide to rise or hit the snooze button, the course of your journey begins to be traced. These minimal choices hold the strength of a river that, drop by drop, carves stone until it transforms it. You may underestimate these moments, but it is precisely within them that the true creation of the future resides. There's an invisible weight in every decision, even the ones that seem trivial. When you choose to feed on negative thoughts or nurture ideas that lift you up, you're tending an inner garden that, sooner or later, will bear fruit. Destiny isn't built in a single leap. It's shaped by the accumulation of these small, seemingly insignificant choices. With every yes and every no, you're moving closer to, or further from, what you truly desire. The road to fulfillment is paved with silent, consistent decisions. Many believe life changes only through great events, but the truth is transformation begins in the invisible details. How you respond to a challenge, how you manage your own discipline, the attention you give to the present moment, all of this sets the tone for tomorrow. If you pause to reflect, you realize nothing is truly neutral. Every gesture is a seed, every thought a brick. Time, relentless yet fair, always reveals the harvest of what was quietly sown. There comes a moment when the noise inside us drowns out what's already available before our eyes. Doubts, fears, repeated justifications, they act like a thick curtain, hiding simple answers that could free us. When silence arrives, it isn't emptiness, but a space where the mind finally finds clarity. Silence, far from being absence, is full presence, and within it, we perceive directions that were once suffocated by the voices of haste and indecision. In silence, the mind discovers it doesn't need endless explanations to move forward. Often, what we seek isn't a new answer, but the courage to accept the answer we already carry. Silence strips away the excess and confronts us with what lies dormant inside, waiting only for the chance to be acknowledged. It is in that moment we understand that doubt wasn't a lack of light, but an excess of noise. It's curious how this silence can feel distant, when in truth it has always been within reach. It doesn't demand physical isolation or complex rituals, only a willingness to empty oneself from within. And when it comes, we realize that life has never lacked answers. We have simply lacked the listening. Silence reveals not by bringing something new, but by awakening in us the memory of what has always been present. Waiting is often underestimated, yet it carries profound lessons. While we believe we are standing still, something inside is quietly being shaped. Every moment when nothing seems to happen tests patience and strengthens inner resilience. It's a time where haste has no place, and the heart is invited to learn that growth never follows the calendar of anxiety. Waiting also reveals who we truly are when no one is watching. It's easy to show faith in the face of the immediate, but true trust emerges in the space between seed and harvest. This seemingly empty space is life's secret laboratory, where the depth of our conviction is measured. Waiting, then, is not loss, but invisible preparation for what is coming. Curiously, it is in waiting that many certainties dissolve and new meanings take hold. What once seemed essential loses its shine, and what was previously overlooked becomes indispensable. Waiting doesn't steal time, it restores perspective. It sharpens sensitivity, strengthens perception, and teaches that life isn't measured solely by speed, but by the ability to endure the interval without abandoning the promise that moves us. Silence is often mistaken for absence, yet it is pure presence. When external noise ceases, a new listening opens within. In this seemingly empty space, the depth of thought, the weight of emotions, and the subtle voice of conscience are revealed. Silence isn't void, it is fertile ground where the soul finds room to breathe. There is a hidden power in silence that haste can never offer. It pulls us away from the confusion of immediate answers and draws us closer to truths that only emerge when words fall quiet. It's as if silence polishes the mind, removing the dust accumulated from daily noise. It reminds us that not every answer needs to be spoken, some are only meant to be felt. But silence is not just introspection, it is transformation. By learning to inhabit this space, the heart discovers a new form of strength, serenity. It teaches that we don't have to react to everything, nor fill every void. In silence, we understand that true maturity comes from the ability to remain at peace, even when the world clamors for noise and distraction. Waiting, so often seen as wasted time, is in reality a silent school where the soul learns lessons that haste could never teach. There is a deep spiritual dimension in every pause in life, in those spaces where nothing seems to happen, yet everything is being prepared. It is in this time of waiting that faith is refined, trust is strengthened, and the heart discovers the value of patience. When life places closed doors before us, waiting ceases to be mere circumstance and becomes revelation. It shows us that we are not masters of the timing of things, but students of time. True growth does not happen in the moment of achievement, but in the silent backstage that precedes victory. It is there, in days that seem empty, that the root of trust deepens, sustaining the tree of the future. Waiting also reveals who we truly are. While the immediate masks our vulnerabilities, time spent facing the unknown strips away the surface layers and shows the essence. It is in this encounter with our own fragility that we learn to surrender to something greater. In this way, the silence of waiting ceases to be emptiness and becomes a prelude, a space where life quietly announces what is not yet ready to be revealed. Holding the rosary goes far beyond physical contact with beads and threads. Each touch is silent, yet heavy with meaning. It is as if, the moment my fingers close around the beads, an invisible covenant is renewed. I feel that it is not only my hand holding the rosary, but that something from heaven draws near, as if grace is already present even before a prayer is spoken. Padre Pio often called the rosary the weapon of the end times, and reflecting on this, I realize this weapon needs no noise to be powerful. The simple act of touching each bead already shifts the field around me, changes the atmosphere, and awakens invisible forces that once seemed distant. Each bead becomes a ring of commitment. It is not a mechanical repetition, but a constant reminder of my covenant with the divine, my choice to remain connected even in darkness, doubt, and the soul's weariness. Holding the rosary is like resealing a pact that transcends words, a silent vow that speaks directly to the heart of God. In that instant, I understand that the power of the rosary is not in the object itself, but in the intention placed upon it. Each touch is an act of presence, surrender, an opening to the invisible. I also feel that the rosary is like a thread connecting the earthly to eternity. It is a silent, invisible ladder rising from my chest to heaven. As my hands move along each bead, I sense I am not alone. A chain of intercession ignites, a flow of protection and blessing moves subtly but intensely. Padre Pio said demons retreat before the rosary, and reflecting on that, I understand this weapon need not be wielded with force, only touched with faith. The touch of the rosary is, therefore, more than a physical gesture. It is silent renewal, a transforming presence, a sustaining covenant. Holding the rosary is more than a gesture. It is opening a door to invisible places, where time and space bend, and the spiritual realm becomes present. Each bead touched is like lighting a flame in a dark corridor, revealing paths once hidden. In that moment, I feel something stirs in the unseen world, as if a silent ladder rises between my soul and heaven, ready to guide me to a dimension of protection, clarity, and intercession. It is in this space that I realize the rosary is not merely an object of devotion, but a living portal connecting my life to spiritual forces that have always surrounded me, waiting only for my conscious surrender. I remember Jacob at Bethel, seeing the ladder stretching from earth to heaven. The rosary is just like that. Each touch, each silent prayer, each Ave Maria spoken from the heart becomes a rung on that ladder. And Padre Pio said demons retreat before the rosary, like dogs fleeing the heat of fire. I see now there is no need for spectacles, visions, or extraordinary phenomena. The simple act of touching the rosary is enough to ignite an invisible presence, a force that protects, guides, and strengthens, even when the mind cannot fully grasp what is happening. When I hold the rosary, I sense I am not only praying for myself or for others, but activating channels that connect past, present, and future, bringing forth accumulated graces, memories of protection, and silent spiritual victories. Each bead carries the weight of all prayers already offered and the hope of those yet to come. In that touch, I grasp the depth of the gesture. It is not merely a string of beads, but a living reliquary of intercession, a channel allowing me to touch heaven without leaving my place. Each Ave Maria is like a seed cast into eternity, and each touch of the rosary assures me these seeds find fertile ground, even in moments of doubt and weakness. In San Giovanni Rotondo, I heard stories that stayed with me profoundly. People came to Padre Pio with heavy hearts, carrying burdens that seemed unbearable, silent pains no human word could ease. And often, the transformation did not begin with long confessions or eloquent speeches, but with a simple gesture, holding the rosary he offered, touching those beads, and allowing the presence of the invisible to draw near. It was not magic, not a spectacular miracle. It was the power of faith channeled through an instrument already imbued with prayer, intention, and spiritual history. Padre Pio often said it was not he who brought change, but the weapon he carried. Watching these people, I realized that touching the rosary became both refuge and bridge. The seemingly simple gesture activated something deeper, the opening of the soul to receive protection, clarity, and strength amid despair. It was as if each bead were a key unlocking doors the person didn't even know were closed, revealing layers of grace that only manifest when we surrender to silent faith and complete devotion. On nights of anguish or disorientation, I've heard stories of people who, without saying a word, simply held the rosary close to their chest and felt an inexplicable lightness, as if the presence of the divine had passed through them, leaving invisible yet indelible marks. Each touch carried a story of silent victory, a reminder that even when everything seems lost, connection with heaven remains within reach. In that gesture, we understand that prayer doesn't need sound, demonstration, or visibility. It happens in the silence of the heart and the depth of the touch. Jesus said, "Whoever remains in me will bear much fruit," John 15 verse 5. Meditating on these words, I see that the rosary is the cord that anchors us to Him. Each touch, each bead, is an opportunity to remain in His presence, to align the heart with His will, to allow light to penetrate the places still shadowed. Victory is not always visible, nor does it need to be immediate. It first manifests within, as a silent transformation that changes the way we perceive life, respond to difficulties, and keep faith steady even in the face of the impossible. The simple act of holding the rosary carries an eternal covenant. It is more than a physical touch. It is an act of faith that echoes in the invisible, a flame that illuminates the soul and dispels darkness even before I notice. As I touch each bead with attention and intention, I realize I don't need to wait for extraordinary signs. Victory begins there, in that silent moment, in the warmth of God's presence, extending into every aspect of life. The rosary is not just spoken prayer, it is strength, protection, and transformation, manifesting the instant the hand closes around it. Holding the rosary becomes more than prayer. It is an act of spiritual survival, a declaration of faith, a reconnection with forces that sustain us. Each Ave Maria spoken from the heart becomes a seed germinating somewhere in the invisible, bringing fruits of protection, guidance, and personal transformation. By touching the rosary, we realize we are participating in something greater, something that transcends time and space, and that even the simplest gesture has the power to change a life, restore balance to the soul, and bring peace that once seemed unattainable. Many hold the rosary expecting it to act like a magical object, capable of instant protection, quick answers, and solutions to all problems. But the rosary is not a wand of miracles, nor an amulet that works on its own. Padre Pio was firm in reminding us that without true prayer and conscious intention, the rosary is merely a string of beads, an object empty of spiritual meaning. The mistake is transferring faith from the divine to the object, forgetting that power resides in the connection it awakens, in the surrender and openness of the soul accompanying the gesture. The rosary functions as a channel, not as an independent source. When treated merely as a talisman, the opportunity to access what truly matters is lost. God's presence, the intercession of the saints, the ability to transform our own thoughts, emotions, and intentions. It is a silent, almost imperceptible error, but a powerful one that drains the energy from prayer and reduces the gesture to routine or superstition. Faith is not delegated to the object. It manifests through conscious contact, through a heart that surrenders, and through the attention sustaining each bead touched. Reflecting on this, we see that the true power of the rosary lies in the living intention that accompanies it. Each Ave Maria spoken from the heart becomes a seed cast into eternity. Each touch opens invisible doors connecting our lives to heaven. Padre Pio said a single Ave Maria said with sincere faith could shake hell, reminding us that the power was never in the object, but in the bond formed between soul and God. It is this bond that transforms a simple string of beads into a weapon, a shield, and a channel of grace. Holding the rosary, then, requires presence, awareness, and surrender. Each bead becomes a step of intercession, each silent prayer strengthens the spiritual field, and every simple gesture becomes a potent action in the invisible. The illusion that the object alone can save is what prevents many from experiencing the true power of the rosary. When we genuinely connect, when intention is clear and the heart is open, the touch of the rosary ceases to be merely physical and becomes transformation, protection, illumination, and victory, announced even before the first word. Holding the rosary is, above all, an invitation to presence. Each bead touched is like placing a silent intention into the heart of the invisible, creating space for something greater to move in my life. It is a simple gesture, yet full of meaning. When I maintain the awareness that I am holding a spiritual weapon, I feel the responsibility and power this touch awakens. My breathing becomes a bridge between body and soul, and with each inhale and exhale, I sense that I am not merely praying, but aligning my energy with something that transcends time and space. As I move through each Ave Maria with attention, I recognize that each word spoken from the heart is a seed cast into eternity. Each bead becomes a point of connection between my life and heaven, an invisible link that strengthens my faith and renews my spirit. Padre Pio said that a single Ave Maria spoken with true surrender could shake hell, and reflecting on that, I feel no exaggeration in each gesture. Each touch is power, each prayer a weapon, each intention a key to transformation. It is in this alignment of intention and action that the rosary ceases to be an object and becomes a living channel of grace. I visualize the Ave Marias as seeds germinating in the invisible, quietly transforming everything around. Each touch is an act of resistance against doubt, a reinforcement of faith against fear, and an act of presence before the divine. Holding the rosary in this conscious state is not merely a spiritual practice. It is a deep dialogue with God, a silent covenant sealing the soul's connection to heaven. When each bead is touched with care, no physical sensation compares to the certainty that something profound is being transformed, that grace is already circulating, and that the simple touch is already victory. Holding the rosary is realizing that the spiritual battle begins before the first word is spoken. I sense that the mere contact of hands with the beads already changes the environment, transforms the atmosphere, and prepares the heart to receive grace. Padre Pio saw the rosary as a shield, capable of quietly altering the battlefield even when I cannot see it with my physical eyes. It is in this initial gesture that victory begins to take shape, because the divine presence draws near even before any conscious effort on my part.